Welcome back to Sitting with Spirit. As always, with anything in life, take what resonates with you. It's what you're meant to carry and leave the rest. And if you know somebody who might benefit from the messages, please send them their way. So, before we get into Sitting with Spirit today, I wanted to talk about something that was really cool. So, I'm on my own mediumship journey, which, if you're a listener of the pod and if you are new to the podcast, check out my Life at the Real Life Hogwarts episodes. Those are the Arthur Findlay College episodes where I talk about my mediumship development journey. And so, mediumship development is basically, it has almost nothing to do with learning to connect more with the spirit world and everything to do with learning to actually trust what you're getting and getting out of your own way and doing less. Like, mediumship development is not about doing more, it's always about doing less. And that's what I'm really learning is like, this nervous system regulation of being okay in the unknown for my mind to not try to jump in and try to make a story out of something. But I was chatting with my mediumship mentor today. I feel like mediumship mentorship is such a mouthful. I try my best. I'm hanging on for dear life right now. So I've, been on this mediumship development journey. I feel like I'm always learning a deeper layer of trust with the spirit world. And for those of you that don't know what mediumship is, it's connecting with our past loved ones on the other side. I'm an evidential medium, which basically means giving evidence of life after physical death and then giving messages from our loved ones. So I've been really working on deepening the trust in my mediumship. And I've been so frustrated lately because there have been a couple connections where it's like, I'm not saying exactly what they're telling me. I'm like interpreting it or wanting to attach a story to it. And then I'm like, okay, this isn't quite right. The person's like, I'm not sure what they mean by that. And then I actually just get out of the way and say exactly what they're giving me. And they're like, oh, yeah, that makes perfect sense. So today I was working on that with my mentor, and she was like, okay, we're going to do an exercise where I give you no validation. You're just going to like, just continue to flow with exactly where the power is taking you, with exactly where the spirit world is taking you. I'm not going to say yes or no, and you're just going to go for like 10 to 15 minutes. So I was like, okay, I actually love that. So in that exercise, I started connecting with a great aunt in spirit and just started going. I knew she was on the mother's side. I knew it was a great aunt. I got her personality, blah, blah, blah. So it got to this part where she was like, I have three kids. And then in the three kids, she highlighted one boy. So if I wasn't doing this exercise, and I had a sitter there saying yes, no, maybe, I don't know, then they would have said no because she actually had two boys and one girl, but she was highlighting one boy. So then, about 1 minute later, the power starts to shift, and I'm taking to a boy in the spirit world. And he was showing me that he was with that great aunt in spirit and that they were very similar. And he was showing me evidence of who he was. And it turns out that was the one boy she was highlighting. He was in the spirit world with her, and he was the next person to talk. So, in retrospect, like the spirit world knew exactly what it was doing, highlighting that one boy, because this is somebody, this was like the sitter's like second cousin that she barely knew. But because they highlighted one boy of the three kids and then went to him, she understood who I was talking to and could, at the end, validate everything I was saying about him living in a log cabin and him dealing with this XYZ thing. The evidence that I gave made sense. So that was like such an example of what I'm learning about trust and surrender. And sometimes, like, validation can almost get in the way of where the spirit world is taking you, because sometimes we think that what they were saying was, oh, she only had one boy out of the three kids. But that's not what they said. She was highlighting one boy, and then it went to that boy. And in retrospect, who was a man like that I was connecting with, and in retrospect, it made perfect sense why the spirit world was working that way and why they were leading me that way. And it also just tied so beautifully into the exercise of trusting the flow of spirit and trusting what you're getting. And so I think for anybody developing, it's like feeling safe in the nose. If the sitter doesn't understand right away, or it's like, and you feel that yes from the spirit world and you feel really connected and you're sure of what you're giving, then try to just flow with that and trust in the bigger picture. They might be directing you in a way that will make sense in retrospect. And that's like where so much of the magic comes from is those are like the emails that you get a month later. Like, I spoke to my mom and actually this message did make sense that I didn't understand. So that's where I'm really at in my development journey, where I'm really working on just trusting more. And it was really interesting because my mentor was like, I would have said no to that. But because of the exercise, I didn't. And then I was like, "Oh, now I see what they were saying by that one boy." So it was just a really cool moment.
That's so cool. What a great exercise too to like trust yourself and play and not have like parameters, you know? And as always, I feel like that's like a great lesson for life too. It's like really learning to trust ourselves, even if maybe if our logical brain thinks, oh, this is the right path, but there's that inner knowing that's like, no, I think you should take this chance and go left or whatever the example is. Like really trusting ourselves in that unknown and not needing the answer to continue to trust.
Yes, it's such a map for all of life. And I feel like the reason I felt called to share this on Sitting with Spirit today is that time is a necessary ingredient to understanding. And like in that exercise, it came within the next 5 minutes. But sometimes in life, it's like the spirit world, our angels, our guides, they almost plant these little Easter eggs that when you look backwards on them, you're like, oh, like the signs were there all along. But I think that we're in this moment, like collectively right now, of so much change on the individual and collective level. And I think that this story of like trust and timing and letting things unfold and following the power, even if it doesn't make sense yet to your logical brain, like following where you are being led and letting that evolution take its own shape. And I think that's such a freeing place to be. And I think that's really what life is. And any inkling or thinking that we're in control is truly just an illusion.
Yes, absolutely. It's so true. And like you said, the real magic is in that unknown. The real magic is in that trust and like following the breadcrumbs and not needing to have the answer. Because often the answer we have is like a limited possibility because we don't have all the
Yeah.
possibilities. And so, yeah, that's just such a beautiful practice. Something I'm gonna be thinking about all day.
Yeah. And sometimes on our intuitive mediumship journey, we think we know what the person needs more. And it's like then we get in the way of what the spirit world actually wants to tell them. And so I think that's also an element of like intuitive development and trust. And as I'm fleshing out this mentorship container that I'm going to create and this intuitive development container that I'm working on, this is like a big lesson. And I'm going to have some really good exercises working on this. But it's just exactly like we were saying. It's also sometimes us being like, we know what we need. And our angels and guides being like, no, we know what you need. And you need to let go a little bit. And so it's just so interesting to see that reflected in the micro of a client session or a mentorship session where spirit just shows how smart they are and how there's just such a beauty and a relaxing into that trust. And so I think sometimes, we're like, well, I'm connecting with this person in the spirit world. Like, for example, at an earlier phase of my development, if I was connecting with that great aunt and then the powers starting to take me to a male presence stepping in, I'd be like, wait, no, I'm connecting with the great aunt. Like, why am I going there? But I flowed into her son, which was an important part. And then they came through at the end and had a very similar message about like speaking your truth and like how they weren't good at verbalizing emotions. And they came in together and wove in. And it's just up to us to literally receive and follow. The basic message here is just do less. It's all figured out. Our guides know what's going on. Our higher self knows what's going on. And our thinking ego brain just really needs to do less.
I always say that about myself and everything. I'm like, I could do like 10% less and it would be plenty. Like I think we can all just do a little bit less. And then when we do that, we allow space for the unknown, space for something magical that we couldn't even dream up. If we're doing it all ourselves, then there's no room for that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I just wanted to share that little anecdote because it was very meaningful to me. And if you're on your own intuitive development journey or just your own journey and trusting your angels and guides and higher self, I hope that you can take this as a reminder to lean into trust, to do less, and to flow, not force. So, starting to get into the messages for the week, Immediately when I started tuning in, I felt this like restless energy. Like it felt really hard to sit still. It felt really hard to get quiet. It just feels like there's this kind of antsy energy. Like I just wanted to move and fidget and distract and avoid and numb and stay busy. And so, that's always a kind of tough, energetic space to be in because it's not super congruent with the stillness and the silence that allows for our higher self to speak. And so, with this, as I started to continue to feel in, I felt like there were layers of discomfort. So, it's like layers of fear and discomfort. And I almost got this feeling of the fear right now creating a domino effect. Like, if that's true, then what does it mean about this and this? And what does it mean about that? And what does it mean about the future? And I feel like it's this moment where there's just layers upon layers where it's like we understand one layer, but then that brings up a lot of other layers that we need to look at. And it just feels like that might get overwhelming a little bit. And you might get lost in kind of the quagmire of this experience of detangling all of the fears. And that's really contributing to that restless energy. And so I saw writing as a really important tool, like journaling, writing, maybe pulling a card, because I felt like when the crown chakra block gets that way, where it's like, okay, I understand one layer, but now here's another layer, or things feel like they're adding up. Writing is a really important tool for that, where it's like, okay, I just need to journal it out because when it's living in my head, it's like this tennis match going back and forth of my thoughts. And I just need to get it out. I need to give it to my angels. I need to release it from here so that the message can be received and I can move on. Because when it stays in our mental realms without being expressed or written down, it just keeps replaying on a loop until we get the message. So I feel like instead of fidgeting, binge watching TV, staying restless, avoiding things, like there's just a deeper invitation to sit with the triggers, to sit with the discomfort, and to like journal and write about it. That being said, after that, I started feeling all of that build up in the crown chakra, which is very common. I feel like, especially in this time period, there's so much going on. There's a lot of fear and anxiety and worry. But then I felt my crown chakra getting really hot and this like phoenix energy. And I got this message saying that our spiritual evolution is being powered by this time period and all of the fear, not in spite of it, but because of it. And that the versions of self that we are called to be right now, of like so grounded and powerful and strong in an authenticity, community, truth, having our own back, working out our own stuff so that we can show up collectively. It's like that is this like beautiful sort of rebirth through the fire element where it's like we see all these things going, we're being triggered by things on the collective, we're being triggered by things externally that's triggering things internally that need to be looked at, and that this is actually by design for humanity's consciousness right now, that these exact challenges that we're facing are actually exactly what we need to wake up, to evolve, to identify what isn't working and to heal a deeper layer. And this is like a really important message that our angels and guides wanted to give, is that they don't want us to feel hopeless. Like on the individual scale, we can believe the fear is truth, or we can take fearful stories about and incorporate them as a story of identity. Like, I'm just this type of person, or this always happens to me. They don't want us to do that on a collective level. Like, humanity is just this, humanity will always be that, the world will always look like that. It's like that's the macro version of that pattern. But actually, this discomfort in the collective right now is exactly what humanity needs for an evolution in consciousness. And the more that we ground into that and do our own work, the more it helps the collective. And that felt like a very important message to give. So I also saw fear showing up like a domino board, where it's kind of like one person's fear triggers another person's fear, triggers another person's fear, until it has this like domino effect. But if we can be the domino pieces that will not get toppled by fear, will not lean into this massive panic or hysteria, if we can stand in our power and our rootedness, it stops the domino effect and it doesn't have anywhere else to go. And it gives other people strength too. So we're working on really just standing in our strength right now in the face of adversity on the collective and the individual. And with that, I saw the symbol of the North Node. And the North Node is like what we're here to do, what we came here to learn, who we came here to be. And I got this feeling that like right now is a North Node activation time where a lot of like karmic lessons are coming up, a lot of like relationships with people that we've done this dance before with are playing out. This is just a moment where there's extra emphasis on who we came here to be and what we came here to do. And that, like, this time is shaping us, like, in terms of our purpose and to pay attention to the major themes right now. I also really want to say, going back to that domino message, that for some people, there's also this message here about family systems and sort of like domino effects of toxicity or abuse or boundary crossing that are like just a part of the way the pattern is set up, where it's like, do, 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 do. We all do our song and dance. Like I topple into you, you topple into me, we go like that. And I feel like there's also a message just on the individual scale of not participating in that anymore and being like the domino in the stack that doesn't topple over. And that's like changing a dynamic in a family. So just wanted to share that too. The next thing I saw was actually octopus as an animal guide. And I always love when octopus comes up as an animal guide because there's lessons around like doing a bunch of stuff at once. And in retrospect, that kind of makes sense with the restless energy I was feeling around the week. But octopus can come in a moment where it's literally I have 8 hands in different things, just like doing everything at once, holding everything at once. And there's just this sense of coming back to balance, taking care of yourself, not letting the energy get too frenetic that it becomes diluted, like checking in with yourself, staying conscious. There's also, like, with octopus as an animal guide, I saw the Libra symbol coming up, which is my sign for love, balance, and relationships. So I also feel like for some people, the message is going to be like, look into where you're doing everything for everyone, where you're juggling a million different hats, where within relationships there might be imbalances, because that's also really coming up thematically. I want to go into the mediumship now because I had the most beautiful spirit come through. I had a gentleman in spirit. He was just like the most kind, lovable, like, he had the most infectious laugh. I felt like he would have always been surrounded by women. Like, he either had a lot of sisters or just a lot of women relatives around him, and he felt very comfortable with that. I also saw like prominent dimples, and I felt like that would have been something very identifying with him. And I saw that he was just a very good hearted guy. Like, not one person had a problem with him. Like, he was just that guy that's kind of like, "Are you an earth angel in disguise? Like, why are you always so happy? Why are you always so kind?" Like, just really loving. I felt like he passed young. I want to say like 20s, maybe early 30s. That's the range I'd put him in. And I saw a connection to the number 7. So that felt to me like it could have been July or the 7th of a month or maybe even 7 kids, but there would be a prominent connection to the number 7 with him. And then he also showed me that he was like very big into church and Christianity and community within the church. And I felt like that church is also where there would be like a lot of women around him. And I saw a connection to him being in like some sort of marching band type of thing. So I don't know if that would have been in high school, but there was something there with like marching band, music, instruments. I felt like he would have had a weak heart, like a heart problem, and would like struggle for breath sometimes, kept bringing me to the heart. And this is where we get into his message here. And he was very adamant about this because his faith meant a lot to him. Is that true Christianity is based in love, community, service, and lifting each other up. Anything else doesn't have the privilege to be associated with Christ's name. That was his message today. Is that true Christianity is based in love. Anything else does not have the right to use Christ's name because it is not Christianity. And he felt very powerful about this. And he felt like that's where he would get angry. Like this earth angel energy that I felt around him, it feels like maybe he wouldn't get angry for his own sake, but he gets angry for people that he sees being hurt. And he gave me this feeling of like, stop hiding, stop pretending. Stop going along with these things that you know are wrong in your heart, especially for those of you that are part of organized religions that you see doing harm on a massive scale, because that is not the way and that is not the truth. That's not true Christianity. And he's saying this needs to be reclaimed. Christianity needs to be reclaimed because it's dispersed into something. And he feels very passionate about that in the spirit world because he really took Christ's teachings literally and he tried to help people. He was such a light and his faith meant so much to him. And he doesn't want people to feel scared or gaslit or like they have to hide their critiques. It's like more important than ever for Christianity to be reclaimed. That's his real message here. Be good, be love. And so this is so interesting, but he brought me to this Marianne Williamson quote that I read last night that says, "When hate screams, love cannot afford to whisper." And I feel like that is where he's going to, is like the hate is screaming. We cannot afford to whisper. We cannot afford for our faith, and I'm speaking as him now, to be commandeered by something that does not have the right to use Christ's name. So that's a very important message. And I think that for any of you hummingbirds listening who are Christian or Christian witches or come from those backgrounds or any faith that you see making a mockery of divine love and divine consciousness, and that is losing its way, it's up to us to stand up for that and to stand up for true wisdom and true, like, loving God goddess consciousness. So that's his real message here because he feels like what he's showing me is that a lot of people in the churches are starting to really wake up and that there's like this feeling of we have to be more vocal about this. There's also another quote that Marianne Williamson said that I feel called to share and close out Sitting with Spirit with. And that quote is, "Democracy dies in the darkness and in the shadow. Tyranny dies in the light." And that's what's so important too, is that when we feel like we have to hide our wisdom, our sense of right and wrong, and our truth, that's how democracy dies. That's how like love doesn't win. And when tyranny is actually, there's a light shined on it and we see what's going on and it's exposed, that's how that dies. So it's so up to us in this moment. And this beautiful spirit person keeps really sharing this with me that like we have to stick up for what's right. We have to be warriors for love and to remind people what true, we have to call things by the appropriate name. Like we cannot call hate Christianity because it is so not Christ-like or in Christ consciousness.
Yes, that is such a powerful message. I'm grateful that you shared it and that he came through and shared it. And I think something that really stuck with me about it too, I know for a lot of us in this moment, it can feel really overwhelming and you can feel powerless. You know, it sounds cliche, but the power of love is always within our power. And the more deeply we love ourselves and all of the people around us, like that is such a powerful force. And I think sometimes we can forget that or diminish how deeply that is felt, but we really have that power in the face of hate, in the face of tyranny, to express our love ever more deeply for this beautiful world and for each other. And so if you are feeling lost or powerless, like I think that's a great place to start.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think like in this time period, calling a spade is so important because there's so many like smoke and mirrors and trickery and manipulation. And I just think we're in this moment now where we can't let things slide. We have to like really be intentional with our words. And that's part of shining the light on things, revealing these things that are not in congruence with the words that are labeling them and getting particular about that and reclaiming these terms that have been bastardized in the process.
The word reclaim was coming into my head right as you said it. Yes, like reclaiming these beautiful practices that are now being used. Shout out magic hour mug.
Yep.
Sorry.
No, I love it.
I love it.
I don't know who I think I am just casually sipping on it.
Sorry for that brief interlude to shout out our beautiful mug from Taylor's aunt. But yeah, so important. We have the power to reclaim these things that are a force of good in our world, and we get to recreate them in that image because all of those things exist within humanity. We create them and we sustain them. So calling them out, reclaiming them for the practice that they always were meant to be of love and service and connection and stewardship of our earth and each other. We have the power to reclaim that. And like you said, call a spade and stand up for what is right and stand up for each other.
Yeah, and that's what this beautiful spirit person was saying is that like he sees all of these groups of people who are like complaining about it in the shadows or kind of feeling like something is off, feeling like they're frustrated with their communities or the systems around them. And I feel like that's the message here too is like, well then speak up. Like create community that is aligned then leave that community and create one for like-minded people that understand and are rooted in love. So that's where I feel like where we're starting to wake up, we're starting to see things that aren't working, we're seeing things that are not congruent with what they say they are, and it's time for us to like clearly label that and create community that is and use our voices.
There's always hope when we have those powers at our fingertips. We are the hope, and we just have to reclaim that.
Yes, I love that. So, thank you so much to this beautiful spirit that had that powerful message. And I'm just so happy that we have each other and we have the hummingbird community and that we have this place to come back to every week to remind us of the magic in the world because we are here. And I really, truly believe in my heart that there are more of us in alignment with love, but that we can't afford to whisper while hate screams.
Yes, such a beautiful message. So grateful for all of you and for you, Taylor.
Yeah. Well, have a beautiful rest of your week. And I love you too, Claire. And I love you too, hummingbirds. And we'll see you next week.